UFC heads to Saudi Arabia for their first ever card in the company's history, and they brought together a pretty solid card, although it has been riddled with a couple of cancellations and late notice pullouts. They were still able to salvage the card as best as possible, and we still get Robert Whittaker in the main event, former middleweight champion, of course, going up against a hot streaking prospect in Aliskerov, who is stepping in on short notice in place of Khamzat Chimaev, who was forced to pull out of the card late last week. Not to mention a bunch of other great fights, including the co-main event, which goes down in the heavyweight division between a former title challenger Sergey Pavlovich, although it was for an interim title, still former title challenger, and Alexander Volkov, who will be looking to stand in Pavlovich's way to try to get back into title contention. Reminder, this is a quick picks version of the UFC Saudi Arabia card. If you're looking for more in-depth breakdowns regarding this card, make sure you guys check out the MMA Logcast, which I dropped earlier this week. I always drop my full card breakdowns on Mondays of fight week, and then I drop this much more condensed version of the card so that you guys can get through it a little bit quicker and to see exactly why I am going with every fight that I'm going that way. Also, reminder, I've already dropped my PFL breakdown. Obviously, PFL goes down on Friday evening, so make sure you guys check out the channel for that breakdown. And I know you guys are waiting for the Bellator breakdown. I will be dropping that much later this evening, Thursday evening / Friday early morning, so keep your eyes peeled for that. That card goes down Saturday morning, pretty much at the same time as UFC Saudi Arabia. So a ton of MMA action this weekend. Luckily, it's Friday night and Saturday morning, so you guys can go do what you want to do on Saturday night. But there is also an LFA card this week in which I'll be strictly breaking down on the Lock of the Night Patreon page in written form. So if you want access to that, check out the Lock of the Night Patreon page. All right. Without further ado, I hope you're laced up and ready to go because we're off and running with the first fight of the night between Long Xiao and Chang Ho Lee. This is the main event for the, or at least the finale for the Road to UFC 2023 season, and it was delayed several times, and now they're finally throwing down this weekend, and I believe Long Xiao is the side here as this fight is nearly a pick'em. Chang Ho Lee is a grapple-heavy fighter, but Long Xiao has faced grapple-heavy fighters in both of his tournament matchups here and turned them both away, showcasing solid defense, good get-ups, and eventually the superior striking. Chang Ho Lee will be the toughest of the two opponents that Long Xiao has already gone up against, but I think he'll be able to come out on top, stopping the takedowns, landing better shots on the feet, and winning this fight on the scorecards. Next up, we got Magomedov Gadzhiyasulov going up against Brandon Ribeiro. This should be a fun fight, but it's ultimately going to come down to Gadzhiyasulov putting the grind on Ribeiro. And Gadzhiyasulov has finished a ton of opponents on the regional scene, but when you dig a little bit deeper, it's clear that those fighters are tomato can level, and you see as Gadzhiyasulov takes steps up in competition, it gets harder for him to put these opponents away, and I'm expecting the same thing here. So he might be able to get a late finish here. The over 1.5 at plus money is a solid spot, but I still think Gadzhiyasulov wins this fight. I'm going to say inside the distance, maybe even by decision. If you can get round 3/decision, that might be a better way to go about it. Next up, Kang going up against Muin Gafurov. Fun fight here again, but I think Kang's slicker striking and get-ups will allow him to really outwork Gafurov here, who will be looking for the takedown and looking to put his power punches to use. But I think Kang is a little bit more disciplined, a little bit better technically speaking, and I think that will leave openings for Kang to land more damage and better damage over the course of 15 minutes to get his hand raised by decision. Next up, Rinat Fakhretdinov going up against Nicholas Dalby. Fakhretdinov went to a decision last time around against Alizio Zaleski, and I think he's taken a slight step down in competition here. Nicholas Dalby, who will obviously fight for your money as an underdog, but I do think that Fakhretdinov's wrestling will end up being the difference maker here. I don't doubt that Fakhretdinov will be able to keep a much solid pace over the course of 15 minutes, and I think that will see him win this fight on the scorecards. Next up, Nasrat Haqparast going up against Jared Gordon. We see Haqparast obviously coming off of a nasty knockout over Jamie Malarkey in December of last year, and I don't think he'll produce another knockout here over Gordon, who has had his durability issues in the past, but I do think we'll still see Haqparast land the better combinations and better strikes. Ultimately, stuffing the takedown attempts are going to be coming from Gordon, keeping this fight on the feet and showcasing his striking advantage here. So give me Haqparast by decision. Next up, we got Shara Magomedov going up against Antonio Trocoli. Magomedov was scheduled to fight two different opponents on this card and now finally gets Trocoli stepping in on fight week. It's going to be a tough mountain for Trocoli to climb, but I think he can make things competitive here, so I don't fully understand the plus 500 line on him here. He's the much bigger fighter, much longer fighter, and I think he has a grappling edge here that he could really put on Magomedov and keep him contained on the mat, possibly even open up a submission opportunity for himself. But at plus 500, I think he is worth a little bit of a sprinkle here, as Magomedov has plenty of holes in his game that Trocoli can expose. Next up, Johnny Walker going up against Oezdemir in a light heavyweight matchup. Walker was showing fine form during his 3-fight winning streak before ultimately having that streak snapped by Magomed Ankalaev. But I think we saw some great things from Walker in terms of his discipline, utilizing his power over the course of 15 minutes, and really managing his gas tank well. I think if he can stay away from the big power of Oezdemir early here, we should be able to see him utilize his speed, footwork, and power way more effectively and win this fight on the scorecards. Next up, Mohamed Naimov welcomes Octagon bantamweight champion Philippe Lima on short notice here. Naimov is 3-0 in the UFC, but I think all of those wins have a bit of an asterisk beside them. And I think Lima can showcase the holes in Naimov's game. The only question here will be if Lima can compete with the size and strength advantage that Naimov could potentially hold here. But I still feel that Lima is the better fighter, and if you can get him anywhere around plus money or evens, I think he's worth a shot here, and I think he pulled it off by decision. Next up, Kelvin Gastelum going up against Daniel Rodriguez, which was originally scheduled to be a welterweight fight, but something that has been brought to people's attention on media day is that Gastelum is struggling to make 170 pounds. It might even have to take place all the way up at 185 pounds. So all of that talk of Gastelum having his weight cut down, especially going back to 170 after so long, for his last matchup, had no issues, but now having to fly across the pond and have a lot of issues during his training camp, things could get shaky for him. But if he still comes in as a solid fighter, and if he can still go out there and perform as the Gastelum as we know, I think he can put together a much better game plan here than Daniel Rodriguez, utilizing his footwork, his in and out movement, his big power, and I think that will eventually translate to a knockout victory. The chalk, a little bit too much on him though, so maybe honing in on Gastelum inside the distance would be the best way to go. Co-main event, Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov try to position themselves in the title picture here, but I ultimately think it's going to be Pavlovich who ends up landing his big power here against Volkov and putting him clean out. Volkov is the technically better striker, but the speed and power advantage of Pavlovich will reign too heavy here for Volkov, allowing Pavlovich to crash the pocket and find that big shot to put him out cold. And the main event, Robert Whittaker going up against Ikram Aliskerov. I believe this is just too big of a step up on short notice for Aliskerov to try to derail the former champion here in Robert Whittaker, who I believe is still capable of high-level performances. Aliskerov might have a wrestling advantage on paper, maybe even sambo advantage, but we know Whittaker has a good enough wrestling game to keep this fight upright. And then from there, I think Whittaker is the better striker, utilizing his karate style to bounce in and out of range, angling off, staying away from the big power of Aliskerov early, and then I think we'll see Whittaker drown him in the late rounds here to get his hand raised inside the distance. There you guys go. Quick picks for UFC Saudi Arabia. Reminder, Bellator breakdowns will drop for you guys later this evening, so stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when that drops for you guys. Otherwise, I will be back for you guys tomorrow for the Locky Trinity / Locky two-step free parlay segment, as well as the 3 best prop bets for you guys. I'll see you guys then. Peace.